Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. He bought a farm to escape the noise, seeking peace, not war. But when a ruthless HOA queen sets her sights on his land, what begins as a friendly offer spirals into blackmail, sabotage, and a gunpoint standoff. One man, one dog, and 150 acres worth fighting for. I bought the farm because I wanted silence. Not the kind you get in a city apartment at 3 in the morning when traffic finally dies down, but real silence. The kind where the loudest thing is wind moving through apple trees and the occasional irritated buzz from a bee that thinks you're too close to its business. 150 acres in rural Georgia will give you that, especially when the nearest subdivision is still far enough away that you can pretend it doesn't exist. For the first year, it almost felt like cheating. I woke up with the sun, worked until my hands hurt, and slept better than I ever did during my 15 years in the police K-9 unit. Rex adapted instantly. Retirement didn't bother him one bit. He treated the farm like a patrol zone he'd been assigned permanently, making his rounds, supervising the workers, and positioning himself strategically wherever he could see everything at once. Old habits die hard even when you've got 4 paws. The trouble arrived wearing a perfect smile and expensive shoes. The first time Vivian Thatcher drove up my gravel road, I assumed she was lost. Black SUV, spotless, the kind of vehicle that never met a dirt road voluntarily. She stepped out like she was walking onto a stage. Tailored blazer, sunglasses big enough to hide half her face, confidence radiating off her like heat. She introduced herself as the president of the Peachtree Estates Homeowners Association, which already told me more than she probably intended. She talked fast, smiled a lot, and wasted no time getting to the point. She said my land was strategically positioned for future development. She said the market was hot. She said words like opportunity and win-win so often they started to sound like threats. Then she named a number, $800,000, for 50 acres on my eastern boundary. I let her finish. Years with suspects taught me that people reveal more when you don't interrupt them. When she finally paused, waiting for gratitude, I told her no. Simple, polite, final. Her smile didn't crack. Not that day. She nodded, thanked me for my time, and left like someone who expected to be back. 6 months later, she was. Same driveway. Same SUV. Same smile, just tighter this time. The number jumped to $1,200,000. She framed it like a favor, like she was rescuing me from a future I didn't understand. I told her the same thing I told her before. I didn't buy the farm to sell it. That was when her tone changed. Not overtly. She didn't raise her voice or threaten me outright. She just tilted her head and said that properties like mine often ran into unfortunate complications when surrounded by organized communities. Inspections, complaints, compliance issues, all said sweetly, like she was offering advice. I asked her to leave my property. After that, the letters started. First came the anonymous complaints. Someone reported the smell of fertilizer. Someone else claimed my bees were aggressive and unlicensed. Another said my dog was dangerous and roaming without restraint. Each complaint triggered a visit. Each visit ended the same way. Paperwork checked, licenses confirmed, apologies issued. Rex sat through every inspection like a statue, ears up, eyes tracking every movement. The officers always noticed him. Some smiled. A few asked if he was still working. I told them he was retired, same as me. That usually earned a nod of understanding. I started keeping records, dates, names, case numbers, photos. Old habit again. You don't survive long in police work without learning to document everything, especially when things don't smell right. The humor of it all hit me one afternoon when an inspector apologized for yet another complaint while standing ankle-deep in perfectly legal, properly managed farmland. He looked embarrassed. I told him it wasn't his fault. He was just the messenger. The problem wasn't the system, it was the person abusing it. I didn't have proof yet, just a pattern. A few weeks later, a certified letter showed up in my mailbox. Law firm letterhead, formal language. Allegations of a property boundary dispute dating back decades, a claim that a survey from the late 1980s was flawed and that 50 acres of my land might not legally be mine. That was the moment the quiet stopped feeling peaceful and started feeling like the calm before something ugly. I stood on my porch reading the letter while Rex sat at my feet, staring out over the orchard like he already knew what kind of trouble was coming. I folded the paper carefully, went inside, and pulled out my old folders, the ones I hoped I'd never need again. If Vivian Thatcher wanted to turn my farm into a battlefield, I wasn't going to pretend I didn't recognize the signs. I had walked away from one career built on confrontation. I didn't walk away from the instincts that kept me alive in it. And I wasn't about to let someone with a clipboard and a homeowners association test how much ground I was willing to give up. The thing about legal letters is they're not meant to make sense. They're meant to scare you. I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of black coffee going cold, reading the damn thing line by line like it was written in another language. In a way, it was. Obfuscated nonsense dressed up as formality. But I knew enough to spot what mattered. Some firm out of Atlanta calling itself Hensley, Marks & Pryor claimed they were representing a new company, Peachtree Land LLC, who, according to their preliminary investigation, had grounds to dispute ownership of approximately 50 acres on the eastern boundary of my property. They cited a supposed surveying error from 1987, said the land was never legally conveyed, and that their client would prefer a peaceful resolution over protracted litigation. The kicker? I checked the county business registry. Peachtree Land LLC had been incorporated 3.5 weeks ago. And the listed address? A strip mall UPS store box. Registered agent. Lloyd Thatcher. Yeah, her husband. I wasn't shocked, just insulted. I called up my attorney, Wes Kramer, a former prosecutor who'd gone solo years back and liked cases that pissed him off. He showed up the next day with 2 cups of gas station coffee, dropped one in front of me, and said, "Tell me everything." Wes read the letter twice. Then he laughed. Not a big belly laugh, just the kind that says, "Oh, so this is the game they're playing." We spread my survey documents out across the table. My land had been measured, recorded, filed, and double-checked when I bought it. Nothing about it was in question. Wes pulled out his own folder and showed me a legal precedent from 2 counties over where a similar LLC had tried a stunt like this. The judge had not been amused. "They're fishing," Wes said, "trying to scare you into settling. If you agree to share the land or sign any kind of acknowledgement, they'll pounce and formalize it." "They're bluffing," I said. "Probably, but they might push it to court just to bleed you out." I nodded slowly, thinking. "Let them," I said. "I'm not signing a damn thing." Wes smiled like a man who hadn't had a good legal brawl in months. Within the week, Wes filed a formal response rejecting their claim and demanding they cease and desist any further encroachment. We also requested any and all documents they were relying on to assert ownership. The silence that followed was expected. What I didn't expect was a second letter from the same law firm, now using different language, softer, friendly even. Our client would be open to a mutual agreement. Attached was a memorandum of understanding and a draft easement agreement that, if I signed it, would allow Peachtree Land LLC to administer and manage the disputed 50 acres while we worked toward formal resolution. Wes practically snorted when he read it. "They're moving fast," he said. "Means they're in a corner. She's desperate." I thought about that word, desperate. It stuck in my head like a splinter. I started digging on my own. I had time. I wasn't the one staging a fake land grab. I found out that the Thatchers had taken out several loans against their house over the last 2 years, and that Lloyd had been listed as the co-owner of a failed property investment company that declared bankruptcy 8 months earlier. The dots weren't just connecting, they were flashing like neon. Vivian wasn't trying to win a power play. She was trying to keep something from collapsing. One evening, I walked the eastern fence line alone, just me and Rex. The sunset poured over the orchard like liquid fire. It was my land, not some spreadsheet on a real estate pitch, not a portfolio asset for people who drank Chardonnay on golf carts. Mine. Rex lifted his nose, sniffed the air. He didn't bark, didn't growl, but his ears tilted forward like he'd caught a scent. "Yeah, boy," I said quietly. "They're coming." I just didn't know how fast. It started with the smell. Early one morning, before the sun even cleared the trees, I stepped out with a thermos of coffee and caught a whiff of something that didn't belong. Sharp, chemical, oily. Not manure, not fuel. Something industrial. I followed it, boots crunching through dewy grass, past the first rows of apple trees toward the wellhead near the barn. That's where I found them. 3 black trash bags dumped right next to the pump house, split open, leaking. The contents looked like they'd been scraped off the floor of a machine shop. Solvent cans, rusted bolts, paint thinner, empty pesticide bottles. Most of it labeled, some not. My stomach clenched. Whoever did this knew exactly where to put it. Next to the well meant the water supply could be in question. They didn't need actual contamination, they just needed suspicion. I checked the cameras. The one facing the wellhead had been turned, physically twisted sideways like someone reached up and palmed it while standing on something. They weren't amateurs, but they weren't professionals either. I found another camera further up the fence line that caught the corner of a vehicle pulling in around 2:43 a.m. Black SUV. Couldn't make out plates. Too dark. Too fast. By 8 that morning, a white truck with the county seal rolled up. Environmental inspector said they received an anonymous tip about illegal chemical dumping. I showed him the mess, then handed him a folder with property surveys, disposal records, and the footage. He wasn't hostile. In fact, he seemed uncomfortable. "I've been out here before," he muttered. "This doesn't line up." "Doesn't need to," I said. "It just needs to raise flags." He took samples, photos, measurements, then promised to file the report by the book. Before he left, he turned back and asked, "You got enemies?" "Just neighbors," I said. "Some louder than others." 4 days later, I got a visit from the fire marshal. It was around 2 in the afternoon when one of my workers, Carlos, ran toward the house, shouting, "Smoke." I grabbed the extinguisher and sprinted. One of the older storage barns on the north edge was coughing black smoke out its vents. By the time we got the hoses running, flames were licking the rafters. We kept it from spreading, but the inside was scorched. Wooden crates, old equipment, insulation, gone. The next day, the investigation started. The fire crew found what looked like a broken bottle near the base wall coated in some kind of residue, accelerant. Someone had tossed a Molotov cocktail. "Targeted," the marshal said. "Not random, not electrical." I didn't sleep much that night. Neither did Rex. He patrolled the property like he was back on duty, ears twitching at every snap of a twig. I set up new trail cams, this time with battery backups and hidden angles, motion-triggered lights, remote cloud storage, the whole package. This wasn't vandalism anymore. This was a campaign. Then came the third hit. Carlos was working near the western fence line, repairing a gate, when he spotted movement outside the property. A woman, blonde hair, tall, holding a tablet or maybe a phone, angling it toward the barn that had burned. When she saw Carlos watching, she turned and walked fast back toward a parked sedan across the road. He had the sense to take a picture. The image wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Vivian Thatcher. No SUV this time, just a silver Toyota with no plates. I didn't know if she thought we were stupid or if she just didn't care anymore. The same day, another letter arrived. This one was more aggressive. Claimed I'd failed to secure hazardous materials, that my negligence posed a public threat, and that if I didn't cooperate with their proposed settlement within 10 business days, they'd escalate to civil court. The balls on these people. I sat at my desk that night, staring at the letter. Rex curled at my feet like a sentry. I thought about the quiet war she was waging, the timing of the dumping, the arson, the inspections, the camera, the drive-by surveillance. This wasn't just about land. This was about breaking me down piece by piece, financially, emotionally, legally, until I gave her what she wanted. I could feel it in my bones. This wasn't her first rodeo, but it sure as hell was going to be her last with me. I wasn't backing down, but I also wasn't waiting anymore. It was a Thursday morning, early September. The air had that edge of summer gasping its last breath. Hot, but not blistering. Apple harvest was in full swing, and the trees were heavy with fruit, branches bowing just enough to remind you how fast a year passes. I was out in the orchard with 3 of my seasonal guys, Miguel, Carlos, and David. Good men, reliable. Carlos was cracking jokes in Spanish while hauling crates. Miguel, focused as ever, moved with a rhythm like he'd done this his whole life. David had his radio clipped to his shirt, blasting Johnny Cash like it was the damn national anthem. Rex was under one of the shade trees, tongue out, eyes half-lidded like he was asleep, but he wasn't. That dog could be dead still for 30 minutes and still track a fly fart from 50 yards. 15 years of K9 work doesn't just switch off because you're retired. Around 10 o'clock, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I looked up toward the entrance road and felt my gut tighten. Black SUV, same make and model I'd seen on the blurry footage. It rolled up like it had every right in the world to be there. Tires kicking up dust, windshield reflecting just enough sun to make it impossible to see the driver's face until it stopped. The door opened, and there she was. Vivian Thatcher. Same sunglasses, same power walk, same dead-eyed realtor, smile that didn't reach past her cheekbones. But something about her felt different. She was alone. No clipboard, no assistant, no we. This time, just her. A slim leather folder and a bag slung over her shoulder. I stepped out from the rows of trees and started walking toward her. "You're trespassing," I called out before she said a word. She didn't flinch. "Mr. Rivers," she said, like we were meeting for brunch. "Let's not do this again. I'm here to resolve things. Permanently." I kept walking, stopping a good 10 feet from her. "You've got about 30 seconds to leave my property." She opened the folder. Inside was a stack of documents, typed, stamped, pre-folded with a little sticky note on where to sign. She held it out like she was handing me a takeout menu. "This is a voluntary transfer agreement. 50 acres. You sign and we're done. No more letters, no more visits. You keep the rest. We drop everything. You get peace." I didn't take the folder. "I already have peace," I said. "Until people like you drive in and try to steal it." She sighed, like I was the difficult one. Then her hand went to her bag. I saw the motion, the hesitation, the weight shift. And just like that, the situation changed. She pulled a small silver pistol from her bag, sleek, compact, too pretty for real work. But it was real. She pointed it straight at my chest like she'd practiced in the mirror. Behind me, the orchard went silent. I could feel the eyes of my workers lock onto us. Somewhere to my left, Miguel whispered something, maybe a prayer. I didn't move. "Sign the papers, Mr. Rivers," Vivian said. Her voice was flat, calculated. Like this was just another sales negotiation with higher stakes. "You really want to do this?" I asked, hands still at my sides. "There are witnesses. Cameras." She smirked. "Witnesses? Please. Who do you think they'll believe? A retired cop with a violent dog and 3 undocumented workers? Or the president of a respected HOA trying to settle a land dispute peacefully?" Her eyes didn't flicker when she said it. That was the part that chilled me. "They're citizens," I said. "You just committed a federal crime, on camera. By the time anyone sees that footage," she said, stepping closer, "you'll be a memory, a regrettable tragedy. I'll say you lunged, say your dog snapped, you attacked me." I defended myself. I didn't respond, just slightly shifted my hand, palm down, and made a small circular motion. It looked like a stretch, harmless, unnoticeable, but Rex noticed. 10 meters away, he lifted his head, his ears locked forward. He rose like a shadow, peeling itself off the ground, and began moving, low, silent, cutting a wide arc behind her. Vivian didn't see him. She was too focused on me. Maybe she thought I'd freeze, or beg, or try to grab the gun. Maybe she thought I was bluffing. But Rex wasn't bluffing. In one smooth, explosive movement, 40 kilograms of trained K9 launched from the right and hit her arm mid-forearm. She shrieked. The gun flew. She collapsed backward with a scream that echoed across the orchard. Rex landed beside her, teeth bared, snarling, but never touching skin. He knew the rules. Disarm. Control. Don't kill. I walked forward calmly, picked up the pistol by the barrel, held it between 2 fingers. One of the guys, Carlos, was already dialing 911. David had frozen halfway through, pulling out his own pocket knife like it might help. Vivian was on the ground, eyes wide, panting, kicking at dirt like she was about to be eaten alive. "Call him off," she screamed. "Rex," I said. "Guard." Rex stood over her, just breathing, not moving, just waiting. The orchard was dead quiet except for Vivian's wheezing and Rex's steady breathing. She lay flat on her back, skirt bunched around her thighs, one heel twisted off, hair stuck to her damp forehead. The confidence was gone, replaced with raw panic. Carlos was still on the phone with dispatch, rattling off details in his mix of accented English and Spanish. "White woman, armed. See, with a pistol. German Shepherd, yes. Trained. No one's hurt. Yet." Miguel had come closer, keeping his hands. Visible, filming again. He didn't say a word. Just kept that phone steady, pointed at Vivian, then at me, then at the gun in my hand. I'd gripped it by the barrel, careful not to smudge the prints. I'd done this enough times to know how defense lawyers thought. Vivian, finally realizing that nobody was helping her, started shrieking. "This is assault. You attacked me with that animal, that monster. I have every right to defend myself. He tried to kill me. He told the dog to... I crouched next to her, calm as a Sunday preacher. "You pulled a gun on me," I said, low and flat. You stepped onto my land. You threatened me in front of 3 witnesses, all of whom are citizens. One of them has military service. And everything's on video, Vivian. I don't need to say a damn thing. You already said enough for both of us." She started to crawl backward, scraping her palms on the gravel. This is entrapment." "No, ma'am," David muttered nearby. "This is Georgia." Rex didn't move an inch. He just stood there, ears back, watching her every twitch, like he was wired to her pulse. 12 minutes later, the first cruiser arrived, then another. 2 deputies stepped out, hands near their holsters but calm. I raised my hand, palm up, still holding the pistol carefully. Carlos walked toward them, phone held high like a trophy. "Thank God," Vivian gasped. "Officers, I was attacked. He ordered his dog. He tried to kill me." One of the deputies, a lean guy with mirrored shades, looked from her to me, then down at Rex. His gaze lingered a bit longer than most would. Then he turned to me. "Sir, mind explaining what happened?" I gave the short version. Vivian drove in without permission, presented documents, demanded I sign over land, and when I refused, she pulled a weapon on me. I pointed to the folder still lying in the dirt. She said she'd say I attacked her if I didn't cooperate, that the dog was aggressive, but we've got video, officer, multiple angles. Miguel stepped forward, screen already lit up. "Aquí, desde el principio." He hit play. The footage was crisp, the audio clear, Vivian's voice, her threats, the reveal of the gun, her exact words about undocumented workers, and self-defense. Then the flash of fur and the scream. The deputy watched the whole thing without blinking, then turned to his partner. "Yeah," he said. "She's done." He walked over to Vivian, who was now sitting up and clutching her elbow like it had been shattered. "Ma'am, I'm placing you under arrest for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, attempted extortion, and unlawful entry onto private property. You have the right to remain silent." She exploded. "No, no, this is a mistake. I am the HOA. This man is unstable. He trained that dog to attack. He's a lunatic with a violent animal." "You were the HOA," the deputy corrected. "Now, you're a suspect," she screamed as they cuffed her, jerking against the restraints. Rex barked once, just once, and everyone froze. I snapped my fingers. "Rex, heel!" He trotted to my side without a sound. They loaded her into the cruiser, still cursing, kicking, crying. I stood there watching, heart pounding slower now. Not calm exactly, but focused. I knew how things worked. The arrest was just the beginning. The second deputy came over, asked for our statements. I handed over the pistol, the folder, and my own camera footage. We gave written accounts. Carlos, Miguel, and David each spoke clearly, calmly, without hesitation. Carlos even mentioned Vivian's words about no one believing Mexicans. The deputy's pen slowed when he wrote that one down. "She really said that?" he asked. "Word for word," Carlos said, jaw tight. "On camera." When the officers finally pulled away with Vivian in the back seat, it felt like a weight had lifted, but not all the way. The real work was about to begin. Wes, my attorney, arrived later that afternoon, driving like he'd been mainlining espresso. I brought him up to speed. He read the report, watched the video twice, and let out a long, low whistle. "This is better than I hoped," he said. "But she's going to fight it. People like her always think they're the victim." "I figured. She's done for on the gun charge alone," he added. "And if the DA wants to stack charges, we could be looking at multiple felonies." "Good," I said. Then I looked out across the orchard, where my workers had gone back to quietly harvesting apples like this was just another Thursday. Rex sat beside me on the porch, his eyes scanning the horizon. He didn't wag his tail, didn't relax. He knew it wasn't over, neither did I. The county station smelled like bleach, sweat, and bad coffee. I'd been there more times than I could count in my old life, sometimes bringing in perps, sometimes doing paperwork, until my eyes crossed. But this time, I was on the other side of the counter. Not as a suspect, not quite a victim, but something in between. A witness to a circus act that had finally torn its own tent down. They processed Vivian like any other felon. Prints, mugshot, chain of custody for the weapon. I watched through the one-way glass as she sat in the holding room, mascara streaked and dignity long gone. The woman who'd strutted onto my land with a loaded pistol now looked like she was waiting for someone to tell her it had all been a prank. Wes and I had been invited down to assist the investigation, which really meant supplying more documents, confirming statements, and giving the detectives access to our recordings. The DA's office had picked up the case fast. Vivian's name wasn't just known in HOA circles. She'd also made enemies in the planning department over the years. Turns out she wasn't so great at hiding her gray area tactics. Miguel, Carlos, and David had come in earlier to give their official statements. I caught up with them briefly in the parking lot as they were heading out. Carlos gave me a tired thumbs up. Miguel just muttered, "She's toast." David smiled, the kind of smile veterans get when someone finally steps on their own landmine. Inside, the detectives walked us through what they'd started to uncover. The gun Vivian used, unregistered, bought through a private sale, no paperwork, illegal in Georgia, strike one. Then came the documents she brought that day, the so-called transfer papers. Their watermark was a fake. The notary signature was forged. The county stamp was printed, not embossed. The folder even included a stapled map of my orchard with red scribbles marking clearing zone and access route. Strike two. But the home run came from her car. When they impounded her vehicle, they found a binder in the passenger seat. Tabs labeled with names I recognized, neighbors, nearby property owners, people who'd been at city zoning meetings. Each had notes. Under my name, it read, "Is a dog still responsible? Angle? Garbage or fire is a lever of pressure. Rural tax audit, possible nuisance case. Offer him a ransom under duress." Wes leaned in, eyes narrowing. "This isn't a land dispute," he said. "It's a coordinated campaign to commit real estate fraud. And not just against you." They also found an envelope with $15,000 in cash, old bills, mostly 20s and 50s, and a printed email chain between Lloyd Thatcher and someone from a private development firm. The last message read, "Once Peachtree LLC secures Rivers parcel, we'll greenlight Phase 1. Estimated return $2.5 million. I almost laughed. They didn't even try to encrypt it. No code words, no deniability. Just naked greed and arrogance on a piece of printer paper. The next day, Lloyd was arrested outside a strip mall diner where he apparently thought nobody would find him. They got him for fraud, conspiracy to commit extortion, and possession of forged real estate documents. During the search of their house, they uncovered 4 other sets of fake property transfers, all targeting lots adjacent to mine. Vivian cracked first. Sitting in interrogation for over 6 hours, she finally asked for a deal. Claimed Lloyd had pushed her into it, that she didn't mean to hurt anyone, that the gun was just for show. The detectives showed her the video again. She cried. Then she asked if turning over emails and documents would help reduce her sentence. It would. The next morning, Wes and I were sitting across from the county prosecutor in a room with too much air conditioning and not enough patience. She slid a file across the table. Vivian's full confession, a dozen emails, hard evidence of conspiracy and coercion, and handwritten notes from HOA meetings where she'd openly discussed strategic acquisition of adjacent rural properties. Her own words. She's going down for at least 6 years, the DA said. Maybe more. Lloyd's not getting a soft deal either. What about the HOA? I asked. Oh, they're in chaos, she replied. Turns out she embezzled almost 70 grand from their budget over the last 4 years. Most of it went into the LLC and bogus legal filings. They'll sue. The residents are livid. I sat back in the chair, slowly letting out the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It wasn't over yet, but it was close. Courtrooms aren't like they look on TV. There's no booming drama, no last-second evidence waving in the air. Real court is slow, procedural, and deeply uncomfortable, especially when you're watching someone try to lie their way out of a corner they've built for themselves. Vivian Thatcher stood before the judge in a crisp navy blazer and a humble white blouse, trying to play the part of a misunderstood community leader. Her lawyer, a slick, smooth-talking type from Atlanta, argued that she'd simply misjudged the pressure she was under, and that her actions were born of desperation, not malice. I was there every day of the trial. So were Carlos, Miguel, and David. We sat through each agonizing motion, each exhibit entered into evidence, each attempt by the defense to spin what was already carved in stone. The prosecution didn't need theatrics. They had the footage, the statements, the folder of forgeries, the emails, the cash, and they had the testimony of 4 witnesses who refused to flinch under cross. David, calm and deadpan, told the jury about the fire, about Vivian's surveillance, about the day she pulled the pistol. Carlos, voice steady, repeated her exact words, how she said no one would believe Mexicans. Miguel brought the phone footage, showed every second of the standoff, including the cold threat and the dog's silent charge. And then came Rex. Technically, dogs don't testify, but his presence mattered. After one recess, the judge allowed me to bring him inside for demonstrative purposes. I walked him on leash, calmly through the courtroom, and when I gave him the same silent command I'd used that day, just a subtle hand motion, he locked eyes with Vivian and stepped forward, alert. She flinched in her seat. The jury noticed. By the third day, it was over in everything but name. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a plea, but the DA offered only a partial reduction if she cooperated further. Vivian refused. She thought she could beat it, that she still had influence. She didn't. The verdict came fast. Guilty on all counts. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, criminal trespass, attempted extortion, possession of an unregistered firearm, conspiracy to commit fraud, filing falsified property documents, 6 years in state prison. 4, without the possibility of parole. Lloyd fared no better. His charges, conspiracy, document forgery, real estate fraud, stacked up quick. He took a deal, confessed everything, and was sentenced to 3 years behind bars. His cooperation shaved off the worst, but he still walked out of court in cuffs. The judge didn't mince words during sentencing. You weaponized your authority as a community leader. You manipulated the legal system, attempted to steal land that was not yours, and endangered a man's life with a firearm, all for personal gain. This court finds such conduct reprehensible. I sat in the back row, arms crossed, Rex at my feet. I didn't smile, but I didn't look away either. After the sentencing, I was approached by the county sheriff himself, who handed me an envelope. Restitution, he said. Court ordered $45,000. Personal damages. He nodded to Carlos, Miguel, and David, who were nearby. And your guys will each be compensated $10,000 apiece for racial defamation and mental distress. Prosecutor made it stick using the video. David chuckled, but not joyfully. She called me a dog handler. I was in Fallujah. I handled worse. Carlos raised a brow. I just want to fix my truck. Miguel? He simply looked at me and said, "You're keeping the land, right?" I smiled for the first time in days. Every acre. That night, I let Rex off leash near the orchard, and he did his usual patrol, up past the hives, along the fence, around the back barn. Same loop he'd done for years. But this time, there was no scent trail to follow, no SUV to watch for, no phantom threat slinking between the trees. Just peace. Life on a farm has a way of reminding you that chaos doesn't last. Nature doesn't care about lawsuits or HOA presidents with God complexes. Apples still ripen, bees still hum, and sunrise still paints the hills in colors you can't buy or counterfeit. It's been 3 months since the sentencing. Vivian Thatcher is currently housed in Pulaski State Prison, where, according to my lawyer, she's filed 2 appeals and been denied both. Her mugshot made the local paper, then the regional news, then one of those viral Twitter accounts that collects suburban justice stories. You know the type. Headlines like, "Karen tries to steal farm, gets mauled by justice," and "Dog." 5 million views in 2 days. Someone added dramatic music to the video of Rex disarming her, with slow motion and captions. He's officially a meme now. The local Humane Society sent us a plaque. Hero Dog of the Year, Rex. It's nailed up in the barn office above a new dog bed I bought him. Memory foam, orthopedic. Cost more than my first mattress, worth every penny. Neighbors who never said 2 words to me before are suddenly waving from their golf carts. Some brought over pies. One guy, a former board member from Peachtree Estates, knocked on my door with a 6-pack and said, "We hated her too, just didn't know how to stop her." Turns out, after her arrest, the HOA held an emergency audit. Found over $67,000 missing from the community fund. Landscaping contracts paid to non-existent vendors. Legal retainers to consultants who turned out to be her cousin in Florida. They're suing to seize her house to pay it back. Lloyd filed for divorce 2 weeks into his sentence. Probably thinks he can get leniency that way, but his name is all over the fake documents. He's done, no matter how fast he crawls. As for my farm, it's never been quieter. I hired Miguel, Carlos, and David on full-time, gave them each a raise and permanent contracts. Miguel handles the orchard. Carlos learned beekeeping faster than I ever did. David's taken over all the equipment maintenance and rebuilt the burned barn into a proper workshop. Carlos fixed his truck, then helped David fix his. then taught Rex how to climb up into the passenger seat without needing a running start. They go on drives together now, checking fence lines, patrolling like it's some kind of neighborhood watch. Rex has slowed down a bit. Not much, but enough that I notice. His muzzle's going gray. His joints get stiff after rain, but the spirit's still there. The same eyes, the same discipline. Every time I make that silent command with my hand, he looks up like he's ready to jump through hell again if I asked. I don't ask anymore. He's earned his rest. Sometimes in the evenings, I sit on the porch with a glass of whiskey and watch the sunset bleed